Setting up an email account in TCM requires you to fill in a few key pieces of information. And if your email accounts are already set up on your phone, then that's a good place to find the information you'll need in TCM. Let's start by setting up a Google email account in TCM. And then later in the video we'll set up an email account like you'd probably have at your office, where the mailbox is provided by your company's website hosting company. In TCM, click on File, Setup, Email Accounts. Click Add Account. In the first box, give the email account a name. This can be anything you like. It's simply to help you identify each email account within TCM if you have several. In the second box, put your name. This is the name that people will see as the sender when they receive an email from you. In the third box, put your email address. Finally, choose Google Mail as the provider. TCM will automatically fill in all the required information for a Google Mail account. All you have to do is enter the password. Now click Test Settings. TCM will check to see that your settings are correct, and if you can access your Google Mail emails from your phone, then you'll also be able to access them in TCM. The steps are the same for setting up email accounts if your provider is Hotmail, Yahoo, or any other well-known provider. If TCM isn't able to connect to your mailbox for some reason, first of all check that you've entered the right password. Secondly, check that your mail provider has enabled POP or IMAP. They might be disabled by default. Thirdly, look for clues in the information returned by TCM. If it got no response from the mailbox, then check that you've entered the incoming mail server and outgoing mail server names correctly. If the mailbox says it's an invalid username or password, then check both the email address and the password. Either might be wrong. Finally, check whether or not your mailbox requires a secure connection. If it does, then make sure you've chosen it here. Now let's set up an email account like you'd have at home or at the company you work for. First of all, we'll set up a POP or IMAP account, and then look at setting up an Exchange account. Click Add Account. Again, give the account a name. Put your name as it will appear when someone receives an email from you. And in the third box, put your email address. Leave the provider as None and choose OK. You'll now need the basic settings for your email account. If it's a company email account, either ask your system administrator for the settings or see what they are on someone else's computer. Most likely they'll be the same for you apart from the email address and password. If you're already using Outlook, then TCM may be able to copy the settings by clicking here. If you're setting up an account at home and you don't know what your settings are, try searching the internet for the name of your internet provider, followed by the phrase Email Settings. You won't be the first person who's needed to know what these settings are. When you move to fill in the incoming mail server box, TCM will suggest the most likely values based on your email address, but you need to check that they're correct. First of all, we need to tell TCM where to find your incoming mail. This could be an IP address or the name of a mailbox. Quite often it's a name which begins mail. And in our case it's mail.appprojects.com. So that we can send emails, we also need to tell TCM the name of our outgoing mail server. Again, this could be an IP address or the name of a mail server which quite often begins smtp. Or mail. And in our case it's the same as our incoming mailbox. Tick the option for authentication if your outgoing mail server requires it. Most do for security reasons. And then enter the username for connecting to your mailbox. This is usually either the same as your email address or just the first part of your email address up to the @ symbol. Finally, enter the password and click Test Settings. If TCM fails to send or receive emails using the settings you've entered, there are some suggestions earlier in this video which might help you find out what might be wrong. If you're setting up a company email account, there are a couple of other things you need to check. First of all, if you're trying to connect via POP or IMAP, check with your system administrator that the POP service or IMAP service is running on the server. By default, they won't be. Secondly, if you're trying to connect to your company's mailbox from home, then the server might be blocking access to people outside the office building for security reasons. Again, your system administrator will be able to make an exception for your email account. If you can't connect via POP, try changing to IMAP, which is a different but more sophisticated way of accessing your mailbox. TCM will suggest that you need to change your port setting. If you can't connect to your mailbox using either POP or IMAP, then try temporarily disabling your antivirus, because all attempts to communicate with the mailbox pass through your antivirus software. If your settings work when the antivirus is disabled, you need to add the TCM application folder in Program Files to the list of antivirus exceptions. Finally, let's set up an Exchange account. The only information we need is the name of the Exchange server and the email address of the person that we're logged into Windows as. You can add all your email accounts into TCM regardless of whether they're POP, IMAP or Exchange. If you want email auto-filing from your mobile phone, you must use IMAP and you must have the same settings in TCM as on your mobile phone.